think I must have been about 4 when I first moved in with Teddy. Me and Dylan had met him a couple of times beforehand. We always did something fun. He'd take us out for ice cream or to the cinema, obviously to get us to like him. I think it was strange for me because me and Dylan had never really bonded by that point. It wasn't until we moved in that we started getting closer, and I think that was just because we both knew how lucky we were. We were bonding over our shared excitement of living in our own house, having our own things, having our own rooms. And those first 6 months with Teddy were a dream. They really were.
For me, it didn't seem real at the start. It just didn't. You know, this man came in and he spoke to me and Katie together, and he planted my feet on the ground. He made me feel valued. He made me see that there is a life out of the fucking walls. You know? So my first impression of Terry was just... I thought the man was amazing. I thought he was coming to save me.
I remember thinking that Teddy was my real dad. We had the same colour of hair at the time and the same colour of eyes. And I remember thinking he was my real dad coming to save me. We couldn't tell the social workers.
You know, he takes me and Katie home, and he shows us love and affection for the first time in our lives, and I think it changed us as people. It made us more warm, you know. Terry helped me become the kid I was supposed to be.
And then it was about 6 months later that Freya came, and I was not happy. I remember being really protective over my family. You know, I thought that was it.
When Freya came into the house, I just felt like there was a disruption to my family. Do you know? It didn't feel like I was being introduced to a new sister. It was more just, here's someone else, you know?
Dad spoke to me and asked me to be kinder to her. It was when I started making fun of her accent. I can hear her now. Katie, Katie, Dad, Katie's doing that again. It's so funny.
I remember when I was moving into Terry's foster home, I was quite nervous and I was quite a quiet, shy child. I was excited and I was comfortable. I felt safe because I'd met Terry maybe 2 or 3 times before I made the move. I don't have a vivid memory of the first time I specifically met Terry. I just know he made me feel really comfortable and safe pretty much off the bat, which helped a lot when I moved into his foster home.
Freya just kind of kept to herself. She never really... She was quiet and shy in the house, but you knew she was a character.
Before I made the move to Terry's home, which is just outside Glasgow, I originally lived just outside Swindon in England with my dad. So it was quite difficult for me because it was a very drastic change. I know that Katie and Dylan and Ryan had all been in different foster homes before they went to Terry's, so they had a bit more experience in the system, whereas for me it was my first home. So I was going from it being just me and my dad to all of a sudden not being an only child anymore and moving to a different country, really.
After a while, you know, she started to ease in, but Ryan came and it it was like it all started again, you know what I mean? Having to settle in again, having to make the bonds, and it's weird when someone just goes, this is your new sister, this is your new brother, you know, it's weird for a kid to go through that.
I've been in a foster home since I was about 2, I think. Yeah, 2. I never really stayed in many of the homes for very long, from what I remember. It was just about 2-3 months, you know. I think by the time I was about 7, I think I've been in about 10 or 11 different homes. When I first got to Terry's, it was like this dreamland. He had this big massive house, and it had 2 floors on the house, and he had this loft as well, which we weren't allowed to go into, but didn't matter, you know, there was that much space anyway. Yeah, like the first 5 years of staying at Terry's, I had so many good memories.
He was really quiet and timid. I don't think he even spoke for the first few months. I remember he used to just always stay in his room. And Dad would always try really hard to get him to be involved with us. He did eventually, and he got pretty close to Dylan.
I think it was that same thing of like, I didn't want to come close to anyone because I knew that maybe in my head that I'd be moving somewhere again soon.
After Ryan came, I remember one time, it was just me and Dad out to drive. And I remember asking him, or rather telling him, that there was to be no more. That 4 kids was enough.
When I think about the memories I have from the first few years living there, they are all happy, funny. I remember Terry had a car, and we would all pile in the back, and he would often drive us places. We'd go on trips or go for a picnic, go for a walk on the beach, and if we weren't out and we weren't at school, then we would usually be in the house playing with whatever toys Terry had got us most recently, because yeah, Terry used to shower us with stuff all the time. He
bought me a Scalextric set when I first moved in. It was just as a gift, like a welcoming gift, you know. And so quickly I just felt like I had this home, which I hadn't felt ever before, really. And I quickly had this safe space, which was great.
Terry changed the atmosphere of our room when he walked in. He just had this atmosphere about him, you just knew he was... You could be comfortable around him, you know, you could be silly around him. It was what each of us needed.
You know, Terry would arrange these movie nights where he'd buy in popcorn and stuff like that, or it was like the microwave popcorn that you'd fling in the microwave, and then we'd all watch it pop up, you know. More often than not, I wouldn't see the end of the movie, I'd just fall asleep. And then I'd just wake up in bed, you know. Terry always carried me to bed if I'd fallen asleep.
Me and Dad used to always go out big drives. We'd drive along really narrow country roads, look at the cows and the horses, and he would do this really cool thing where he did a weird whistle and all the sheep just ran away. I used to think it was so cool.
In the first few years, I really feel like he paid attention to what our interests were. You know, Terry asked me what I liked to do, and I told him that I liked drawing and painting. I came home one day and he'd got me an easel with about 2 or 3 canvases, watercolour pencils and paints and expensive stuff. That was the way that Terry treated us. He would always look out for what we were interested in and then gift us with something.
The first, let's say, 5 years were promising. They were fun, uplifting, everything a kid needs That's what the first 5 years were.
Me, Dylan, Katie, Freya, we all had something that we'd never had from anywhere else before. At Teddy's I had my own room, I had a beanbag chair, I had this awesome like Buzz Lightyear wallpaper. It was such a home and it was such a comfort and it was such a safe space.
There was nothing I was ever afraid to tell him. It made it feel like he was always on my side. Whether it was giving us a day off school just to play, or as we got older it was like lying about our age so we could go see a film at the cinema. Terry was always a bit of a rule breaker though, or rather a rule bender, that's what he'd say.
He was this amazing person that had not only given me all this stuff but also given me this life and introduced me to Katie, Dylan, Ryan, who I was so close with. You know, us four would always do stuff together. All the memories are things that we would do as a 4 or a 5 with Terry.
And you know, when we all finally clicked, it was so fun. It just made me feel like a kid. I didn't feel like I had to look out for myself. I didn't feel like I had to do everything myself. It was finally a family, you know.
I've got so many great memories of being in Terry's home when we were wee. Once me and Dylan turned about 12, it started to change a wee bit. It wasn't as kind of glamorous as before.
Everything is nice until it's not. Now, the thing is, it wasn't just, well, it was actually. Things just changed in the blink of an eye.
We'd walked back from school, me, Katie, Dylan and Freya together, and Terry was apparently at the shops, but Dylan had a key because he was the oldest and Terry always gave him a key, because more often than not he was at the shops after we came back from school, and we wanted to go play football outside, but it was raining, so we played football on the upstairs landing with a flyaway football. And he'd left the loft hatch open.
Now, in hindsight, Terry shouldn't have told me that was the only rule. You know, he was so open and so free to let us do whatever we wanted, but to then tell us we can't do this one thing, I think it just gave me the urge to do it even more.
And it was never go into the loft. He was always pretty lenient with everything else. Considering he had like 4 kids running about, he was pretty lenient with rules. But his one rule was don't go into my loft. You know? I mean, he had like an office of sorts up there.
What's up there, you know? What can I do to go up? Because it just kind of felt like Terry was hiding something.
And Dylan had accidentally kicked the ball up there.
Ryan looked away for a split second. And I just kicked that ball right up those stairs. Bang, hit off the door and it went into the loft. It didn't come back down.
Me and Dylan kind of decided that we would just go up, get it and then come down and not touch it and make sure you didn't figure it out. So Dylan went up first and then I went up after.
I can still picture it. The dartboard on the left wall. There was a family photo of us on his desk, which was nice to know. Luxury carpet. Something else.
There was this big safe which was lying open. I'd imagine that was open for the same reason the loft hatch was open. Maybe Terry had left in a hurry or something. But inside the safe there was loads and loads of bags of different drugs.
Green stuff and white powder. Now, you know, at this point we didn't know what Terry'd done for a job. Terry was smart, you know. Terry was this sort of guy that would feel what you were feeling. He would put himself in your shoes so that you felt more comfortable. But he was so private.
I didn't really know what it was, you know. I knew it was something bad, you know, that way. You just get a wee kind of feeling that's a bit weird. And I kind of felt like I'd invaded his space. Obviously we had, but you know, I got that really guilty feeling, and we'd broken his one rule.
That was it. You know, I never found out how Terry knew we went into the room, but he just knew. He did. And you know, a part of me wanted to hate Terry for knowing what I'd done.
When they were coming back down, they had the football, but they were so weird. They were just they were really quiet, and they felt, I don't know, it was like they were a bit disconnected from themselves. Like they had seen something that had made them like thrown off a bit. So that is a memory that sticks out in my brain, because I remember putting two and two together and not really understanding why they were giggling and they were having so much fun when they went up, and then when they came down they were so different.
The next morning, Terry asked me for a wee word before breakfast. He told me that he knew that I'd been in the loft, and he knew what I saw. He started talking about how he was disappointed in me and how I'd broken his trust, and I started crying. I went to school that day and I didn't really speak to anyone. I just constantly had that sick feeling in my throat. After school, I rushed ahead from Dylan, Katie and Freya, and I got home first, and Terry was waiting for me in the living room. He asked if I'd told anyone. I said no. So he went and got a box from the kitchen and he brought it back through, and he told me to open it, and I opened it, and it was a skateboard.
I remember it being an early morning. The sun was beaming through the window, and Terry comes and wakes me up, myself, you know, just me, and he says, we're going to go a drive, you know, just something different. We didn't speak for a while, we just drove. Terry asked me if I went in the loft, and I told him I did. There was no hiccuping about it, I just told him straight, yeah, I did it. I thought Terry was going to send me back to the home, and he didn't. He just shouted at me for the first time, and that was weird. It was different. In the full time that I'd been staying with Terry, he'd never shouted at me, never made me feel like I'd done wrong, but he did with the loft.
When Terry started to get me involved in dealing, it was coming up to the summer before going into high school, between primary school and high school, and I went skating one day and I snapped my deck, and Terry said I can get a new deck if I've saved up enough pocket money, you know. But when I was that age, I just kind of spent it on sweets and rubbish and whatever else. So for me to get more pocket money, he said he would give me these little bags of weed. I can't really remember what I thought it was then. Again, I was just kind of oblivious that he was like, if you give these people, they'll give you £20. So I was like, cool. So whatever money I made, I took a quarter of it and then he took the rest of it.
And he told me that I was going to join the family business. And he told me Ryan was too. But it wasn't going to be a punishment for Ryan. It's just going to be extra pocket money. It was going to be more money for him. He would get stuff out of it. But it was almost like a chore for me, you know. It's almost like, right, step up. This is it. You're the oldest. And this is the thing, yeah. At that age, you're not educated on drugs. You're not told this is that, that's this. You know, when you first see it, it's a different game. Completely. I didn't know what we were doing was wrong. I didn't know it was breaking the law. You know, I thought this is a family business, and it's a family business. You know. Stopped going to school as much. Stopped talking to Katie as much. Stopped seeing Ryan as much as I did. The family just kind of started to distance.
Things definitely changed that day. The atmosphere was just different. And the boys, I don't know, just seemed a lot older. Yeah.
I feel like the best way to describe it is that they just grew up so fast. It was like they grew up overnight. You know, one day they were kicking the football around the house, and then after that it was just kind of like everything was a bit more serious, and they kind of just stayed to themselves. Like, they became a bit more of a pair, and me and Katie became a bit more of a pair.
After the loft incident, you know, me and Ryan really, we had no choice but to grow up.
I felt bad about the loft, and like I felt kind of obviously sad about him kind of not trusting me as much, but I think I kind of earned it back. But then he started to get the girls involved. When Teddy got the girls involved, me and Dylan both weren't very happy about it. I don't really know how Dylan felt before, but certainly for me, I was pretty happy with my relationship with Teddy. Even though I was going out and dealing, he was still treating me, Katie and Freya pretty well, and still like his kids. But when he decided that Katie and Freya would then also get involved, it just kind of changed. I didn't think it was fair. They were so young, and they must have just been happy being kids. And even though we were involved too, I think the difference between me and Dylan and Katie and Freya was that they were just so innocent and so sweet. Terry kind of took a bit of that away.
Terry first got me to drop anything for him when I was 13 years old. I used to do it on my way to school, so the first time that he asked me to, it was when I was literally just about to start walking. And he just stopped me and said, you know, he needed to drop this thing off, but he couldn't anymore because he was busy. So he asked if I would do it for him. And I mean, I did it because I didn't think it was anything weird. You know, I feel like most kids would deliver or post a letter or do something that their parents ask them to do on their way to school. You just don't question it and ever think it's anything illegal. Yeah, so I mean, I did it. It was pretty simple. It was literally just the route that I would walk to school, so I didn't have to go anywhere different. He gave me like a plastic bag and it had some stuff in it, but it was tied at the top, so I didn't get to see what was in it. And he just said that I needed to go to this house, that I just needed to push this bag basically through a fence, which would then make it drop into this person's back garden.
I just started high school because I remember I kept wondering why me and Freya were in the same school again, but we weren't allowed to walk to school together. And she'd leave 15 minutes before me, but I'd still get there first. And I never questioned it too much. I just thought she went to the shop or something. But when I asked her, she was quite secretive, so I knew something was happening. And I kept asking Dad, and I think that's when it happened. He didn't have a reason why I couldn't walk with her. And it was almost as if he was saying, fine, on you go. You asked for this.
Things were fine at the start with the drops, you know. For the first year or so, it was just like going on a nice walk. When Katie then got involved, things changed and the dynamic of the situation changed because there was more than one of us dropping. And I remember when she first started, I would go on the walks with her and stuff and sort of show her what to do and stuff, because I'd been doing it longer. And we would split up and do different routes as well once Katie sort of got the hang of it, which was really good for Terry.
I know he spoke to Freya sometimes, but never me. There was still a lot I didn't know though. I just didn't want to ask. I just presumed that everything I needed to know she'd tell me or explain to me. So it was Freya. Freya was the one that taught me everything.
When he got my sisters involved, that was the first time I ever thought to myself, I'm losing respect for you. The man I'm trying to make myself into, who I look up to, is seeing an opportunity with two young girls to use them to drop off huge amounts of drugs.
After I'd been dropping for about a year, just under a year, that's when Terry actually spoke to me about what I was doing and the business side of it. He sat on the bottom of my bed and he basically told me that what I'd been doing, you know, these things I'd been dropping, and what him and Ryan and Dylan had been doing was something that needed to be kept a secret. And no one could know. It was something strictly between our family. He did lay down the sort of situation to me. He did tell me the consequences of what we were doing and that it wasn't exactly legal, but even then, something about the way that Terry said it to me and the way that he spoke to me about it, it didn't strike me as anything really bad.
We were to leave the bag on someone's front step, and it was kind of like a longer driveway, so it was easy to be seen. And we were walking up, and it totally took us by surprise. The door just opened, but like we didn't hear any footsteps or anything before, so it was clear that the man that was there was waiting for us. When the door opened, I looked at Freya, and I could tell it was something that she'd never encountered before. The man told us he was lovely. He told us he was our Uncle Jack and that Terry had told him we were on our way. And he asked us to come inside. Nothing even happened. We went in and he was chatting to us, asking us about school, talking to us about Terry. It was clear that they knew each other, definitely. He just gave us a glass of orange juice each. We left the bag on the kitchen table and Freya said we had to get heading, so that was our way out.
I was a 14-year-old girl going into these 40, 50-year-old men's homes with a lot of money or a lot of drugs, and Terry didn't really see an issue with that. You know, Terry knew that I was doing that. I told him I'd started going in, and I'm sure that the men had mentioned to him, but he didn't ever tell me that that wasn't okay. And I think if he cared about me and Katie, if he gave a shit about either of us, he would have told us to go back to just pushing it through the fence.
Obviously he didn't think that they were the kind of people to get caught. They were just two young girls walking to school. Why would anyone think anything otherwise? After that, I really wasn't keen on Terry.
For my 13th birthday, Terry got me a bike. And he got me it because I wanted it, but I knew it was to pick up the pace. I almost kind of forgot that he was the one that was getting us to do it, because we never really spoke about it. He'd leave the bags out for us, we'd do what we needed to do, and he'd send us money. It was almost as if we could all just pretend it wasn't even happening.
I remember after he sort of told me everything, he said, you know, I'd like to start giving you some pocket money for doing this for me. Which I was very happy about, because I was doing these drops anyway, you know. It was just a wee walk for me, and I'd been doing them for free for nearly half a year. I never really saw it as pay. I never saw it as me receiving money for doing these drops. I did just read it as my parent giving me pocket money the same way as any other mum and dad gave their kids pocket money.
I just knew that it was wrong. Kind of. I don't know. As there was more, me and Freya would split up and we'd have our own routes.
These men were sleazy. They would look at us in very uncomfortable ways and make very uncomfortable remarks. And, you know, after a wee while of actually going in, when I was about 15, they would get a bit touchy. And that is something that I wasn't okay with. I was a stupid young girl. I should have had someone to point out that it wasn't right and help me away from that. And I thought Terry would have been that person, and he wasn't. We were just little parts of his plan, you know?
I was angry, but I didn't let it out. I didn't shout about it. I didn't show him I was annoyed. I just accepted it. Just kind of like, okay, it's our time. Nah. We weren't a family. We just went back to being lost kids.
I think it's so easy for him to be painted as a bad man. And that's certainly the take the newspapers put on it. And I'll never be able to justify his actions. Or what he did. Or what he made us do. But it doesn't mean I don't love him. Doesn't mean he didn't love us. So many people have tried to tell me that he was just using us, and that he knew what he was doing all along. But that's not true. He's my dad. He is my dad. Everything he did for us. We were always his driving force. He wanted the best for us. Things just got a bit out of hand.
5 minutes.
Terry's arrest was inevitable, but I didn't think it would be for what it was for.
It's just kind of like any other day, to be honest. Freya and Katie did their thing after school. Me and Ryan just came straight home. Didn't even remember if Terry was in, but I just remember getting a text off him to put dinner on.
That was quite weird because Terry always made sure he was back for dinner. He made sure we were all in the house, including him.
Dinner was Terry's thing, you know, even though we kind of all went distant. Each of us took 15 minutes to eat dinner together, do you know what I mean? Just for Terry.
So Dylan made the dinner for us that night, and we all sat around the table as a family, minus Terry.
It was nice. I came home and Terry was out, and then when Katie got back, we all just, the four of us, sat around the table and had dinner.
I hadn't felt that togetherness that me, Katie, Freya and Dylan felt when we were a wee bit younger in a long time.
It was lovely, you know, felt like a family again. Only thing was Terry wasn't there, and it was a little bit, you know, missing a little bit of the banter, you know, because that Terry brought that, you know, he'd make everyone laugh. We sat down, we had that meal, and it was perfect send off, as I like to see it as.
And I mean, we didn't know that it was going to be our last dinner together as a family, but it was the last time that any of us ever really hung out or did anything together. I remember when dinner was over, we were just doing the washing up and the door went and Ryan answered it, and it was two policemen.
First instinct, I think, is that a bust?
My first thought was, oh God, I need to go hide the drugs. Because I assumed they'd come to search the house. Instead, they told us that Terry had been arrested for murder.
Terry beat the guy to death with his two hands.
I just couldn't believe it. I knew that Terry wasn't the best person, you know. I knew that we'd been doing some things that were things we shouldn't have been doing, but I just never in a million years thought that Terry was a murderer.
I was truly shocked. I knew that Terry wasn't the best of people, but I really didn't think that he had that sort of thing in him. Behind all the shitty things that he did, he still felt like an innocent guy as far as that sort of thing goes.
You know, it was cynical, it was disgusting, inhumane in a lot of ways. And I don't know why. I still don't know why. And that's what bites on me every day. The fact I have this image of me and my brothers and my sisters that were some kind of animal family, some four deranged lost kids brought together by this ringmaster.
I knew that he was a bit of a prick and that he didn't really care too much, and that he, you know, he had this business and that was his main priority, but I still thought he gave a shit, and that he wasn't, I never thought that he had the capacity to murder someone. ever. So I just remember I felt so many conflicting emotions, and some of them as well were, I was so upset because I didn't want Terry to get arrested. I didn't want him to go. I wanted him to come back and just be normal, and we could all just keep being normal. But you know at that point that nothing is going to be the same. I just never thought that he'd kill someone.
The police told us that a social worker would be around later to come and collect us and take us elsewhere for the next wee while, whilst all this stuff was figured out, and that we should pack up our clothes and belongings. So we did. I put all my clothes and my savings and other bits and bobs and whatnot into a suitcase and a rucksack and put it all down by the door along with everybody else's stuff. I made sure that any stuff I had kicking about my room was put back into the safe and in the loft so I couldn't be done for it. I was thinking that doing that would stop me being charged for anything when the police would inevitably search the house, but obviously not.
When Terry finally got trialled and got sent away, I didn't think they were going to investigate us.
The boys were old enough to, go and move on and well, actually, the boys were old enough to be held responsible for the actions that they'd taken.
Eventually, when the trial came around, me and Dylan got charged with community service, which is not that bad.
Drug distribution. They didn't think we should be sent to prison for it due to the whole manipulation factor, but 60 hours community service, every hour of that made the hate grow for Terry.
And Katie and Freya were deemed too young to be responsible for their own actions, which was good. They didn't deserve that. Terry's final charge was second-degree murder and a few other drug things. Looking back on my childhood, it was pretty fucked up. We'd all been pretty unlucky with the start of our lives, ending up in a foster home, but we found peace and happiness when we eventually were fostered by Terry. Then everything went tits up and we became a drug family pyramid scheme of sorts. And their foster dad was arrested for murder.
I went from loving and idolising this man to downright hating him. Because he fucked up. He brought the four of us into this drug world, this drug ring, manipulated us, made us think it was fine, it was a bit of pocket money, that it was a job, it was a way of becoming a man. Terry didn't think about the consequences. Terry didn't think about what he was doing to us. Terry thought about himself. Terry put himself first.
It's all so fucked. It's fucked up. Now, when I think back on it, I still understand that I felt that love and care for Terry, and I don't feel annoyed or upset at myself for feeling like that. And even after he was arrested for killing that guy, I am aware that I still felt this connection to him, and I was so angry, but I was so incredibly distraught that he'd been that I was never going to have him again in my life, because that was literally my entire life, was this world that Terry had created for us.
I've got absolutely no clue why Terry murdered someone. Yeah. I'm assuming somebody owed him money, or someone threatened him in some way or something. Because I don't think Terry is the kind of person to murder someone unprovoked. I think for the majority of our time with him, he genuinely cared about us. Yes, he got us involved in stuff he really shouldn't have, and used us and manipulated us, but when it came down to it, I think he cherished having a family. I know the way he treated us is questionable, but I think he loved us. He treated us so well for the first few years. He gave every single one of us something that we'd never had before. A loving parent and a home. And even though that kind of disintegrated a wee bit as we got older, it was still, the structure was still kind of there. And he was still our dad. I still think he deserves the sentence he got. Yeah. Yeah.
Terry's where he should be. I would never want to see Terry again.
I will never be able to forgive that man.
It was for me. Terry did it for me. The man that Terry murdered. He was a new customer. One I hadn't been to before. And he was just off my usual route. Sometimes with the bags, especially if it was a bigger bag of weed, I'd take some, either for myself or for my friends. And on this day, that's what I did, and I smoked before going to the man's house. He invited me in, which was fine. And normally people just want to have a chat, and they're really friendly. But this man, he wanted to know I'd given them the right amount. He brought out his scales. Said he knew I'd taken some because he could smell it off me. Said I had to repay him. I knew exactly what he meant. Said I'd taken something that wasn't mine, and I had to make it up to him. So we went upstairs. I didn't know what to do or say. It was over pretty fast. And I just left. I never told anyone for the first few days. Who could I tell? But I knew if I didn't, it'd keep on happening. The next few days I never did my rounds. So the bags were just still sitting there until Teddy confronted me. And it was when I finally said I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to deal for him. I was really angry at him. And I told him about the man and what happened. And he didn't say anything. Not a word. That day after school, I didn't drop anything. I just went a walk. I couldn't do it. I wish I never told Teddy. I knew that he'd be angry. I just thought that maybe he'd tell us to stop. He'd say to us that it was too dangerous and he didn't want us to do it anymore. That's what I was hoping for. And I don't think he ever set out to murder the man. Never. He wouldn't. I never told the others. Ever. That day when I got home, it was nice. Almost like the calm before the storm. Oddly calm. And the four of us just sat and had fun. Which was the first in a while that we properly had a chat and enjoyed each other's company. For the last time.
You've made this film to tell your story. So have you considered that Terry might see this?
No.
He is in prison. Why would he?
Yeah. I hope he does.
Yeah, actually. I'd like to hope that he sees this and thinks that we've done right by him.
Is there anything that you want to say to him?
Fuck you, Terry.
Are you going to be sending this to him?
Nah, I don't think so. Nah.
I think if anything it would just be that I don't hate you. Yeah, you did a lot of bad things and it's kind of fucked me up. But I understand somewhat why these things happened.